Thank you, Angela and John. That was so beautiful. I asked for that song, and I didn't know if we were going to get it, but we did, and it was lovely. All right, so ever heard the saying, I'm in favor of progress, it's change I don't like? That's Mark Twain. So we're here in unity on the brink of possibly some pretty great change, right? We're in the process of reinventing ourselves. We're not likely to go back to business as usual. But that said, each of us responds differently to change. And the Wizard of Oz characters that I have here, and Garth, I don't know if you can get a close-up of them. I brought my friends with me. I know they're small, but they're mighty. We're going to talk about the Wizard of Oz heroes and their journey and how all of that parallels each of us and really the organization. So I want to talk about the sort of default roles people take, particularly in organizational change. So we have Dorothy. Dorothy represents the leader or the co-pilot. The leaders are the folks that are the first collaborators, right? And they help shape the change. They help guide others through the change process. And if you think about Dorothy in the film, you know, she is the one driving the whole quest, the whole journey, right? She's also the one holding everybody together. So, you know, that's the leader role. And I want you to use your imagination and think about where your default position is, the place where you're the most comfortable in terms of your responses to change. And then we have Scarecrow, all right? And Scarecrow represents the change champions. Now, the change champions only represent about 10% of the people. And Scarecrow in the beginning, he says, I'm not afraid of anything except fire. But I'd face a whole box of matches if it meant I'd get a brain. So he's like ready. He's on board right away, no hesitation. And these folks are inspired by the possibility of change. They may have tons of ideas on what and how things can change, and they also help rally the troops. The challenge for the champions, if you will, is to not succumb to impatience with others getting on board, right? Then we have Tin Man. And Tin Man, when Dorothy encounters him and she invites him to go along on the journey, he says, but suppose the wizard wouldn't give me a brain when we get there. He's like hesitant. And so the Tin Man represents the people who are on the fence, just hang out on the fence, right? Not sure if the organization is really going to change, not sure it won't. And they sit on the fence waiting for a sign which way the wind is blowing. And the biggest majority of us are fence sitters, right? And fence sitters tend not to engage in the process until they're sure the way things are going, right? And so they're just going to wait and see how the wind blows, whatever. So that's fence sitters. Well, we all know about Cowardly Lion, don't we? He comes out fighting. I'll fight you from top to bottomless. And why? Why does he come out combative and you know, ready to fight you with one hand tied behind his back? Because underneath that, he's afraid, right? So he represents change resistors, right? Or the cynics. And they've possibly been hurt before and probably been hurt before. And so they're going to fight the change. It's really important, though, that the cynics are the resistors and the cynics are listened to, not only because they need to be heard, they may have important information for us, but also if they're not heard, they can sabotage the whole process, right? Only about 25% of us, but that's a big percentage, are change resistors. Now, we're not fixed in any particular role, but we do tend to default to one that we're most comfortable in. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand or anything and, own up to which role. I will, though. I tend to, I'm sure this isn't going to be a big surprise to anybody, I tend to be one of the change champions, right? Anybody in this room surprised by that? But I have to listen. And I have to hear what's going on. The thing is that it's really important that we don't go unconscious, right? That we are aware of the default role that we take, know that we're not stuck in that role, but know that we're coming from that place. And then we can be honest. It's really important that we're honest with each other and we listen to each other and that we make conscious decisions. Because it's just easy to sit on the fence and, oh, this person is pulling me that way and this person is pulling me that way. But really getting in touch with where am I truly at and what do I need to communicate? What am I afraid of? What am I excited about? To do that, we need what I would like to call determined authenticity within ourselves and honest communication with each other and with our leaders. I want to talk for a minute about determined authenticity. And I'm going to tell you a little story because, authenticity, it's a tough one and it's a big one. We can be authentic at this level, oh, I got my feelings hurt. Okay, that's truth, authenticity. There's a bunch more below that, isn't there? For example, I could tell this story about a person that was here years ago. I've been here long enough to say years ago. The person that I had, it kind of got plugged in. I kind of got sometimes irritated by or annoyed by. And I observed that some other people also, sometimes got irritated by her. She tended to be a little bossy, a little impatient, potentially kind of a know-it-all. Okay, these were my descriptions in my mind of her. And because some other people were maybe also had some reactions, I figured, well, it's her, right? Easy enough to do. But then we had a workshop and I had this interaction with her and I thought, you know what? I need to tell her. And she needs to know where I'm coming from, what my reactions are about. So I did, and she was quite open to the conversation. She was very receptive and we talked it through. And guess what? As I was describing what I was feeling, I realized, oh dear, this is about me. This is me seeing parts of her that I'm not too happy with in myself. I hate that's true. But honestly, I can be impatient. I can be judgmental. I can be bossy. I know you don't believe that, though. And I'm not real fond of those parts of myself. The deep authenticity is to be able to say, okay, this isn't about me being annoyed with her. This is about me not loving all of who I am, right? That's That's determined authenticity. And we need that with each other. We absolutely need that. So as you're reflecting on all of this and looking at the characters, you can think about, what role you normally take and what you can do about that. And then I want to talk about the journey. Okay, because we're on a journey. Dorothy was on a journey. We're on a journey here at Unity. We're on individual journeys. And back in 1949, Joseph Campbell wrote about the hero's journey in The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Actually, he wrote it. It took him 5 years to write it. He was a self-proclaimed mythologist. And in this book, he outlined the archetypal narrative structure of stories about heroes who undergo transformation through trials and tribulations. And Dorothy goes through all the stages of the hero's journey, in her journey from Kansas to Oz and back. And in his blog, Jim Lockhart, his blog is called New Thought Evolutionary, he says the deep work of personal transformation requires a positive sense of the hero as an aspect of self. Sorry, I've been getting over a cold. Which can strengthen you through the challenges of the journey. After all, at the center is your own destiny, a greater idea of yourself, which is ready to express in your life. Now, the first stage, there's like 17 of them stages. Some of them have been distilled down to 12. I'm not going to go, I'm wanting to get to the abyss of transformation. So I'm going to talk about some of them, but not in detail. But the first is Call to Adventure. I rewatched the movie in preparation for this talk, right? And some things stood out to me that I hadn't really noticed before. And one of them was before Dorothy sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow. She's troubled because of Miss Gulch and Toto and, all that stuff, right? But she longs for a place where there isn't any trouble, right? Don't we all long for a place where there isn't any trouble? It doesn't work that way, though, does it? And it doesn't work that way because we grow and learn through trials and tribulations. That's what we're here for. And, but we all long for it. So she runs away and starts out on her adventure. The heroes in all these stories, if you think about all kinds of them, they get supernatural aid. So Dorothy acquires the ruby slippers. She gets help from Glinda the Good Witch, who's always watching over her and her companions. Think about Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. He gets the lightsaber, and he has Obi-Wan and Yoda to help him. What do we have? Our connection with Spirit, our spiritual teachers, right? And each other, our helpers. So as we go through our transformation, personally and as a community, we're going to rely on the spiritual aid and our teachers and our coaches and our guides. And then the next is through trials and tribulations, we get to the threshold, the beginning of transformation. So if you think about Dorothy, she had several challenges along the way to the Emerald City, didn't she? So the witch comes and sort of harasses her, and the apple trees throw apples at her, and the witch tries to set the scarecrow on fire, and then they come to the poppies and they fall asleep because the witch has enchanted them, and then Glinda helps out. Glinda doesn't do anything for her, but she is there to help. and to watch over. And then they all get to the Emerald City, and she already has her adversary, the Wicked Witch, right? And she's gonna make even more trouble for Dorothy. And then she set out on the quest. So this is her being on the brink of the abyss of transformation, right? Because now she has to really do the really hard work. You know, it was a kind of a cakewalk on the yellow brick road, if you think about it, compared to what she had to go through after that. The abyss of transformation is like death and rebirth. We say goodbye to our old selves. We say goodbye to things that haven't been serving us. And then we're resurrected in the process. So Dorothy and her friends, they have to go through the haunted forest to the witch's castle to get the broomstick. And in at the beginning of the haunted forest, there's a sign that says, "I'd turn back if I were you." But they can't. Well, they could. I mean, you can always turn away from the abyss. You can always say, you know what, that's too hard. I'm not doing that. And we do. We do turn away from the abyss because it's unknown, it's scary, it's new. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So sometimes we do turn away from the abyss. In our case, though, have you heard the saying, well, I know you know this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? We as an organization, Unity, we can't do the same thing over and over that we've been doing. We can't. Of course, this is my humble opinion. However, I see a lot of nodding heads, right? So we're going to go through the abyss of transformation. And of course, Dorothy has to face the ghosts and the flying monkeys, and poor Scarecrow gets all torn up. There's some of him over there, and there's some of him over there, and that's me all over the place, he says, right? But they don't abandon her. They stick together, right? They know they need each other to do what they need to do. So Joseph Campbell also said, "It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life." Right? Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. The very cave you are afraid to enter turns out to be the source of what you are looking for. The damn thing in the cave that was so dreaded has become your center. You find the jewel. You only find the jewel, though, by going into the abyss. And so that journey through the abyss requires the willingness to be utterly honest with yourself. In recovery programs, for example, step 4 is make a fearless and searching inventory of ourselves. Right, so if you're going through a recovery program, honesty is required. In fact, they also say in recovery programs, the people who fail are people who are incapable or maybe just fundamentally unwilling to be truly honest with themselves. In therapy, that's the same thing you have to do. Uncover your feelings, your demons, your ideas about yourself, your self-concept. There's a book, and I've probably told this story before, but there's a book that I read a long time ago, fantasy book called The Sword of Shannara. And some of you are nodding your head, you know this book. So there's this elf in an elf village. He's not a hero type. He's just a elf living his elf life. And he gets chosen to go on a quest to find the sword of Shannara, which is supposed to be this really powerful weapon. And of course he has all these trials and tribulations. Of course he does, because it's the hero's journey, right? And when he finally confronts what the sword really does, this is what it does. The sword makes you take a completely honest look at yourself. You look at yourself in total with full and complete honesty. When I read that book, I thought, that was a long time ago, I thought, I don't know if I could do that. I honestly didn't know. I thought, well, that's terrifying. Now, of course, the bad guy, he can't, and it destroys him. But it wasn't easy. And so I like to think now that I can be that determinedly honest with myself. But it's still not easy. So Thomas More said, "We are on the hero's journey when we submit to the deep processes of life and allow them to affect us and bore their necessities into us. We are the hero when we take on the challenges and go through our initiations and transformations, enduring loss and gain, feeling happy and sad, making progress and falling back. The hero is engaged in life. The hero may not look heroic from the outside, but may go through powerful developments in a quiet way. The real hero engages in life and reflects on it. She becomes more and more what he or she is destined to be." So, Dorothy and her friends go to they make it to the castle. They manage to destroy the witch, and with the help of each other, and they get the broomstick to bring back to the wizard. Excuse me, I'm in 10 days in my cold now. So, keep thinking, I hate this. When's it gonna stop? It has only been 10 days, so. So then you get to resurrection and the return. So they complete the quest, right? And they return to the wizard. And of course the wizard isn't really a wizard. But each of them learn they already have what they were seeking in the first place. Brains, compassion, courage, and the power to return home, and the appreciation there is no place like it. Right? So Jim Lockhart in his blog says, what we seek is already within us. So if we think about unity, we have it. We already have what we need to become all that we can be, right? We don't necessarily know what that looks like right now, do we? We don't know. Are we going to sell our property? Are we going to keep our property? Are we going to go back to our previous model? Are we going to have some sort of new model of conducting our ministry? We don't know. But we have what it takes. This community has what it takes, already within us. What we seek is some aspect of ourselves which we have not yet expressed and is being called forth to face some challenge and heal some condition. We are always up to the challenge because everything we require is already within us. And also Joseph Campbell said, the purpose of the journey is compassion. And true compassion requires a consciousness of oneness, doesn't it? Where you see the other as being one with you. And it is always possible to expand our acceptance of oneness. So there is always more of the true self to express. Now, I'm going to tell you another story many of you have heard, but forgive me, I like the story. And this is also about me. A number of years ago, I was driving on Lancaster and going out to do errands. And the whole Lancaster for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks was lined with anti-abortion protesters. Okay? And they had their signs, you know, abortion is murder and whatever other things they say. And it made me mad. It made me mad. I'm like, listen, you people, you have no right to tell me. Of course, I was over 50 at that point, and that ship had sailed for me, but nevertheless, you don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to decide for me. And those were all my reactions. I was upset, because there was lots of them out there, and I was upset. I didn't like feeling that way. So I went in one of my stores, and I was thinking about it. I was reflecting on, all right, I'm not feeling too great. This is not making me feel good. I could blame them, right? I could do that. And I did for a little while. But I thought, wait a second. Who is the true me? Where is spirit in this situation? I came out of the store. I had another errand to do. They were still out there. But this time I didn't look at the signs. This time I looked in their faces. As I was driving by, I looked in everybody's face. And I just saw people. Just people. And some of them didn't look back at me. That doesn't matter. Because I didn't see the conflict anymore. I just saw the people. And my heart kind of opened, and I felt like so much better. And I didn't change my position. That's not what that was about. It was about compassion and taking ownership of my own feelings, my own reactions, and my own solutions. And then I went in another store, and I came back out, and they had dispersed, and I thought, darn it, I don't get to look in any more faces, because it was a really great experience. So it is always possible to expand our acceptance of oneness, so that there is always more of the true self to express. And we can do that with each other. Unity here, that's what our name is, unity, right? Oneness. Compassion, love for each other. And when I was going through my own dark night of the soul, when my ex-husband left, and I was completely devastated, and I thought, you know, I can lay down and die, or I can get myself on a spiritual journey. I did that. And one of the things I learned about myself was that, you know, I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know what that meant. It never really made any sense to me. Love is like a feeling, I thought, and I don't know how to do that. I guess I can treat myself good, but I didn't know what that experience really was. Now, you often hear people say, in order to love other people, you have to love yourself. How many of you have heard? Raise your hand. Have you heard that? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm going to tell you why. Because what I did was love other people. I started opening my heart to other people. I started seeing the light and the connection and the willingness or the eagerness to contribute. I started seeing those things in other people. And then I started seeing it reflected back to me. Right? It's like, oh, I must be lovable. You know, people are acting like they love me. And like I matter. You know, and that was my process. I'm not saying you have to do it that way. I just didn't know how to love myself. So I loved other people. Right? And that worked for me. And I brought the compassion. So I'm going to wrap up with something else I noticed in the movie. So when it's time to go back, get Scarecrow, excuse me. Yeah, Scarecrow learns he's already smart. He doesn't need a brain. He's already, and if you think about it, if you watch the movie, he's the one that comes up with all the ideas. Like as they're going through their journey, he comes up with all the solutions. He already had a brain. And of course, if you think about the character of the Tin Man, I mean, wasn't he just the sweetest, right? He already had compassion. He didn't need it. And courage, by the way. Courage is not freedom from fear. Courage is having your fear and doing it anyway. And I say that that's what Lion learned. And then there's the wizard, right? So he's just done with being a wizard because he says he's not a very good wizard anyway. Good man, not a very good wizard. So he's going to take Dorothy back to Oz. But, of course, Toto, you know, who, by the way, is the catalyst for all this change, he jumps out of the basket, and Dorothy has to go after him. And so now Wizard's in. But when he gets in the basket, he says, I'm going back to the land of E pluribus unum. I didn't remember that from the, I mean, I guess I knew it, but I really never gave it any thought. It's like, you know, I hear E pluribus unum all the time, but he says, I'm going back to the land of E pluribus unum, out of many, one. I mean, if that doesn't say it all, what does? All right. So we're going to go into a little time of meditation now. Okay, so close your eyes, settle yourself, feet on the floor if you like, just relax and use your imagination. So imagination is what is going to bring forth all that we are, all that we can be, right? All that we desire. And allow yourself at this time to just float in your imagination and think about, you know, who you are and where you're going, who we are and where we're going. Nothing that has to happen, nothing that is required, except to be fully who we are, coming from the place of spirit and knowing and trust and faith and courage and compassion and intelligence, right? And let yourself float in those ideas. Bathe yourself in the joy and the excitement of the journey, knowing that we and you can face whatever tribulations come forth so that we can deepen and learn and grow and change. It might be scary, and yet we have inside everything we need to accomplish what we're going to do and what we want. And just float in that knowingness for a while. And go into a place of silence, connecting with universal creative force and intelligence, the co-creator of all. Just spend a little time silently reflecting. And when you're ready, you can rejoin your body, come back to the room, open your eyes, and bask in the connectedness between us. Right?